Hi, my name's Kirsty Page, and in this recording, I want us to look at the fundamental value of language based play as part of my writing preparation diet for all young children, but to use this as a source of intervention for children with language needs, but also how language based play needs to sit alongside the early and more formal teaching of writing because it continues to build a really important set of skills. Now, within this recording, I want to talk mainly about the language based play that is pretending. I've unpicked creativity and drawing in separate recordings, and we will build on this recording itself further by talking about small world and character play opportunities as we build these pretending skills in another short recording. So I really just want to kind of begin by talking from a child development point of view and from a pre and early writing point of view where pretending fits in. So pretending and creativity are two sides of the same coin, so to speak, so that both of these types of play are underpinned by a child's symbolic skills, that ability that a human brain pretty much uniquely has, where we realize that something in the real world can be symbolized by something else, an object, a picture, or a word, and later on that symbol could be the written word as well as the spoken word. And we know that the real object in the real world, or the real action, and the thing that we can do in the real world, is symbolized by this object or by these actions within our play. And it's very crucial for early language development, this type of play. And we see that children with delayed language development are notoriously later to begin to play in a pretend way than other children, and children with disordered language development may find pretend play specifically difficult and need to be nurtured and coached how to play in this way. So let's think about pretending and what kind of actually happens in terms of child development when children interface with the opportunities that we have within our learning environments. So basically, by setting up a learning environment, you set up different areas which are filled with resources. And many of those resources are there to be a stimulus, to be a symbol of something in the world outside, in the real world. So the most obvious example to think about to begin with would be a home corner where I have toy food to symbolize real food. I have pretend kind of spoons and plates and cups so that we can pretend to drink or have something to eat. Maybe something to symbolize a baby, for example. But then in other areas, you will have different symbols, animals, or transport, for example. And when I learn to pretend, what I first and foremost have to do is use my visual skills to recognize the key features of those objects. So, be it a small toy car, my visual skills and my visual discrimination and then my visual memory will recognize that that object shares the key features of a car, but that it's not a real car, it's just a symbol of a car. Or that the wooden green sphere in the home corner is not a real apple, but my visual skills recognize key features of it being an apple, and I realise that it is a symbol of an apple. So this is linked with my visual skills and my visual memory, but it's also linked in with my early vocabulary development. And once I recognise what these objects represent, I can then use my internal language mechanisms. I generate ideas and I do something with that object, and it might be that I roll the car along, or it might be that I pretend to eat an apple, and that to begin with, those early pretend play actions will be very, very simple, and generally they will reflect things that I am familiar with and that I see happening in my everyday life. And so looking out for pretend play emerging in our very youngest children, and looking for children knowing how to do that, is a really important part of language development. And it's really important that I flag up children where I think they might not have made that connection. As my play skills develop and as the ideas that I generate around that pretending increase, and you will see me move away just from very simple actions to more complex actions, and then more sequences of actions, and that you will also see me begin to pretend around topics and using objects that I might not necessarily have direct real life experience of. So, of course, everybody can have experiences that will allow them to access a home corner, as long as they've got those kind of play and language skills in place. But of course, if I am playing with the farmyard objects and the animals, that I can still understand what these objects represent, and I can still sort of act things out using the tractors and the animals. But it might be that I have no personal experience of that, but I create my own experience through these symbols that you've put in the learning environment. And if we're doing that together and you're adding language, you also are building my language around that set of objects and those imagined and activities and things that we're doing with those objects. I think it's important to kind of understand that just making sure that a child can pretend and learns to pretend and utilizes pretend experiences with in multiple different ways, with multiple different topics and vocabulary, is about building language skill in its own right. Certainly, as an ex-speech and language therapist, when I got young children referred who were maybe very late to get started with talking, then kind of nurturing pretend play in the home, using toy food, having a little tea set, just building pretend play skills would have a positive knock-on effect on the child's language development. So I think it's very important that we see play and playing this in this way as a really important part of our language provision, but that building and nurturing play is actually a very, very valuable source of language intervention. And as we get that kind of pretend ball rolling, so to speak, then we can build that pretending skill. We can build the range of experiences and the different topics around which a child is able to pretend around. But also, as well, we can add language within the moment of playing and pretending together. Um, and of course, as I interact and add language, I'm going to be building all children's skills. But the more I can become aware of how I should add language as I pretend with different children, the better I can become at gap filling. So, generally, if I'm thinking about interactions, I need to think about first and foremost my positioning. Um, who do I still need to be on a level and face to face with? Or who can cope with me being just next to them? And again, that will depend on the level of their auditory attention and of the level of their communication skill. How much should I say when I add language? Do I want to use short little utterances and leave gaps in between? Or can the child cope if I use a slightly longer utterance as I add language? Pretend play creates great opportunities to build vocabulary, the nouns of the objects that we're using, the concepts to describe what those objects are like, but also that verb vocabulary to describe what it is that we are doing, to describe what it is that is happening. And we must remember the importance of verbs, particularly for pre and early writing. But again, I can't just think about vocabulary. I have to think about positioning so that I can get that child's attention as fully and get them to tune into me as fully as I can. I need to think about the volume of language I'm going to add, and only then can I then think about which vocabulary am I going to add and reinforce? How repetitive do I need to be? Is this a child who will learn words really quickly and easily? Or is this a child where I've got to take it right back to add language in a more simple way, but also to add language much more repetitively so that they have multiple opportunities to hear the same word again and again rather than lots of different words. And also, pretend play creates great opportunities for me to model language. Model language as I talk about what I'm doing, model language as I talk about what the child is doing. And it could be that a child is only using single words or very short utterances. So when I add language, I want to deliberately model not long sentences, but the child's next step so that they can hear what an achievable language model and their next step might sound like. It might be that the child also is using short utterances but not yet linking the words, linking the utterances together with connecting words like and, so, or because. So it might be that as I'm pretending, I say, oh, I'm going to pour a cup of tea because I am thirsty. Oh, I am going to have an apple and I'm going to eat a banana. So it could be that I deliberately add certain grammatical structures because I'm aware of a child's next step. So the adding of language and getting that as right as possible for that child and the next steps is really valuable and really crucial part of our embedded interventions. But I think we need to go right back to the beginning and just really explain that if we create opportunities for children to pretend and if we nurture that, then we are actually nurturing the same parts of the brain that children will use as they talk but also as they write. So definitely in reception, I want to make sure that children have these experiences and that I still value these experiences as part of how children learn, even if their formal learning has begun in different ways. But definitely into Key Stage 1, if I've got slightly older children, and it might be that writing is one of my targets, but I know that writing is tricky for some of these children because of their language base and their foundation language skills. Then if I have play-based learning still available, if I still have continuous provision in Key Stage 1, then I need to be really clear about what I want that learning environment to create opportunities for. What skills do these children still need to practice and to facilitate? What are these children's next steps? And does my learning environment give me plenty of opportunities to build the skills? Or say, for example, if some of the children still have issues with writing because of an earlier level of success with fine motor development, again, what fine motor opportunities does my learning environment create, so that I have an environment that creates the opportunities that I want my children to have and that my children need, so that I very much see that learning environment as a source of ongoing skill development, but in a really targeted, focused way, even though the children don't realise that. And my learning environment also becomes a really valuable source for embedded interventions, because for many of these children, my interventions will be about ongoing building of fine motor, ongoing building of language skill, ongoing building of auditory memory skill. Very rarely will be, very rarely will my solution be simply just to do more and more writing with these children. It's about building, it's about identifying gaps, it's about building skills from children's current level of success, incrementally closing that gap to remove that barrier. That's really what I want to be sitting alongside my more formal teaching of writing. Thank you for your time.